you live? There we go. Welcome, and thank you for coming. I see all these smiling faces out there. All ordered, meeting order at 5 o'clock. Have a mover and a seconder. Ian and Robert Fire. Councilor Grant. This July 10th special meeting of council to call the order at 5 o'clock. Note that quorum has been achieved and the procedural bylaw be suspended for the duration of this meeting. All in favor? And I am too. Declarations of disqualifying or pecuniary conflicts of interest. But you have a conflict? No?
None.
Seconder for the agenda. Councilor Grant. Council for the Corporation and Municipality of Calvin hereby approve the agenda as circulated. All in favor? I'm in favor as well. Pass. And the next item is the budget presentation. We'll move over in a second, please. Nancy, Councilor Loudon. Resolution 2024-245, the Council for the Corporation and Municipality of Calvin hereby receives the 2024 budget second draft presentation for discussion.
So don't pass that.
I'm not passing it. But we have to move in a second to get the links of discussion.
Right.
Thank you.
Welcome, Jenny.
But before you go, I was supposed to welcome a new person to the table. Rich is taking fruits of fruits tonight. Thank you very much for helping us. And,
Great. So, we have the package. I don't think we need to go through it as detailed as we did on the last meeting. I'll just go over the things that are changed from the first draft that we discussed. 1 second. Are you able to hear, Robert?
Yes, I can. Although it does help if people are looking at the owl. It seems to pick up. If you speak towards the owl, it's easier to hear. Sorry
I will
about that.
try my best.
I can hear you.
Okay. Okay, so just looking at the budget highlights for our draft number 2 discussion, consultant incorporated the changes from the June 20th meeting. And those changes, the impact is an increase in the levy to 1.708 million, which is about $29,000 more than it was for the first draft. So having said that, with that extra 29,000 now brings your tax rate up, obviously. So the residential properties only 44.8% will see an average increase of $48. 28, almost 29% will see an average increase of 147. 16% will see an increase of an average of 237, and 10 will see an average increase of over 300. So in our first draft, we had almost 53% seeing that average increase of 46. So there's definitely an impact to the changes that were discussed at the last meeting to the ratepayer. So I'm going to just skip down to the operating budget. So from the revenues perspective, I received a report with actual revenues to date. And there was a significant amount of landfill and I'm calling roads revenue I don't know exactly what your account is called though.
It is roads right now.
Roads equipment, I think it was called or
And that was
something.
because we brought in money from the sale of some.
So some of the surplus equipment. So I was able to increase revenues in those two areas. And then where the significant changes happened were in expenses. So with the changes to the capital budget, we were able to not have a contribution from the operating budget to balance the capital budget. So that was about 22,000 that we saved. We obviously increased our legal fees, which I think we need to have a more detailed discussion on that in a few minutes. I did increase the contractor expense only because I had originally missed about 15,000 for brushing. I had the roadside grass cutting in, but not the brushing with the mulcher head on the excavator. So discussed increasing a few of the fire department expenses, salaries being a significant one. There was a small reduction in council costs. I had calculated a little more per diems than council thought that they might use, so I think there's only maybe, I want to say maybe $1,000 for wiggle room from what your regular council remuneration is. And also the training, council training went down because council felt that council wouldn't get to the training they thought they might. And then there was some small adjustments up and down in the roads department and recreation departments. Capital budget, fire department to replace equipment and purchase the ATV. That's totaling 47,250, all being paid for by reserves. Public Works has already purchased the new dump truck, paid for partly by loan, partly by reserves, and will purchase a used half-ton truck, which will be paid for from reserves. And gravel application, work on peddlers. Can't remember if it was drive, lane, road, so just peddlers. And ditching on 2 roads paid for by Nords and CCBF, which is AKA the gas tax money. So all of your capital budget now is being paid for by funding. It is not a burden on your taxpayers. It's all dedicated funds.
If I could just for a second, we hope technology stays with us for the night. But the purchase of a half-ton truck isn't really a new expense. I just wanted to bring that forward. We're typically paying the road superintendent of the past about $1,200 a month. So it's not a new expense to the budget. It's an expense that's all been there, only now in the form of a purchase instead of an expense.
Yeah, so that's a good point. There may be a little bit of savings. I can't remember if I dropped the expense line. So I might be able to drop the operating expense of mileage in roads down a little bit, but you're talking.
Yeah, I don't think it would be worthy of spending the time on it because we're already into, it will be a while before we purchase. So.
Exactly. It's gonna take you a bit to find a used truck within your budget.
And in the meantime, you still have not the per diem, but the actual mileage rate of paying anyhow. So I wouldn't touch it for the small amount of money that it might.
Yeah, it's not gonna
It's
make
not
that
worth
much difference.
Just wanted everyone to know that it's not that we're expensing anything that we've always had an expense. Just now we're actually going to invest it in a physical asset.
So the ditching on 2 roads is coming under what is funding? That's
CCBF. Peddlers is all Nords,
And CCBF.
all your other things is CCBF.
Peddlers is a Nords and CCBF. The other stuff we can say in CCBF.
Yeah. And council also has the OSIP money that we're not touching, to about $300,000. So I don't know how long it's been accumulating, because I think it's another one of those pots where you need to use it within a certain time frame. So you might want to just check on that.
Yeah, and so some of that will, some of the road stuff will put towards
Well, I don't have any OSIP budget.
Okay,
Anything coming out of OSIP, out of this budget, everything is North and CCBF. So if you need to use OSIP to keep it,
right.
you can shift between gas tax and OSIP. Okay. So the next page is just the operating budget summary. So your budget, your operating budget's about 2.15 million. So your next one's your levies. I was able to find all of the 2023 actuals. So the 2023 levies. So this is the money that pretty much you collect and send out of the township. So it went from 430,000 to 442,000, so about a 2.8% increase. So right then and there, before you do any of your regular work, you already have, you know, $12,000 more to pay. So again, I don't think I need to go over the revenues again. As I said, I increased some revenues for the landfill and for roads revenue just because of what the actuals are to date so far. And then expenses. We already talked about council, so I reduced the salaries and benefits and I reduced the council training. We did talk about reducing the CPP because 2 councillors are of age, but I still think, I think that it's already, I already had factored that in, so I didn't reduce it any further. Administration, excuse me, the services line of 4370, like halfway down the page. That has increased for the consultants and the staff and the time that is not your true staff that are working on your 2023 postings.
So that alone has been an expense for that one person from January to August. It's been, you know, unexpected.
Okay, your lawyer's fees. Our first draft was 60K. Last council meeting, we talked about increasing it to 100K. I think we might be a little short on what your actual are going to be. But again, that discussion needs to happen from council on whether you want to have the entire burden of your extraordinary legal costs this year on the taxpayer, or if this is an opportunity to lessen that and be prepared to take a loan. So that's something that council needs to discuss and decide.
So if I might add on that, right now our actual is 40,000, and we are every day. This week, I've been on the phone with me. We can't talk about the cases in this open session, but we're at $40,000 actual. That was the figure, I believe. If we're adding 45 that we spoke of, then that's 85. And if we're adding 60, we're at 145. Those we can count on that being actual without another legal call or the invoice that we're about to get for this week, last week, since we met. So this is already $45,000 too low and before we incur any other legal costs. So this needs to be increased significantly. And if you recall, Jim said at the beginning, a $29,000 increase over the last draft budget increased the levy to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
Right, what is it?
Sorry, your average assessment on a residence is 153,000, so it went from $140 increase to $175 increase, so 29,000, 35 bucks. $35 increase for every 153,000 assessment for every 30 grand you increase the expenses. Follow that?
And this is 145 without any more legal costs, and we know that we're going to have regular legal costs.
Can you outline the benefits of deferring that with loan versus having it, posted in this year, kind of the pros and cons of.
Yeah, I mean, I think your cons are you're paying interest, and interest rates aren't great this last year. But I think the big pro is that you're spreading that expense over a couple of years, whether you even do it for 1 year and share the costs in 2024 and 2025, or they're significant enough, share them across 2026, so that the taxpayer sees that as 3 smaller hits to their taxes as opposed to one big hit in 2024. So that's the biggest pro is spreading out that expense for the taxpayer.
So it's more of a cash flow moderation instead of, because you're actually adding a bit of interest, and
Exactly,
1 year mortgages are around 7 right now, so short term bonds are 13,
yes,
relative to where it's been.
absolutely.
I just wanted to remind everyone that when BDO was here giving the audit presentation, they encouraged us whenever we needed cash because of the way our financial situation to not touch reserves instead of increasing. They have no idea when you're talking legal, they're thinking more capital expenses, right? They're encouraging us to borrow rather than use it through taxation. So this is an opportunity, given these extraordinary expenses this fiscal year, we need to bump this up to 145 without another legal phone call. So what will that be?
That's when they go, or
No, we need to discuss it.
We need to discuss the number.
The number, not the cases, but the number. I mean, it's, I don't know what that cost would be, but I do know that it's significant, given the amount of time I spend on the phone with legal. I'm going to guess based on, the amount of time I'm spending on the phone with legal, the bills I've seen coming in. It should be 145 in front of you now. Jenny wasn't aware of, some of these other things that we discussed in post, since we met. And so 145, that, we should be pushed to 175. And you'd be safe,
based on,
safer.
well, I mean, you can't buy the lowest thing to have
No.
closed or just by the numbers, I'm thinking 2, maybe 300,000 more in line with what we need.
I don't believe so, though. I can, with all due respect, because the cases won't be finalized. So
Yes.
this is more to cover.
Your legal costs will be higher for the next couple of years until things.
So the way I envision this number, the number that we had added to the budget is something that's gonna bring us through, in 3 years.
We're
Well,
adding to the budget of this year.
no, I understand that, but what my point is, these costs will soften over time. If it's built in the budget at, say, 145, next year, it'll be in the budget, so, it'll usually have 145 in a future year budget. We can, if you want a number that, in my opinion, you want a number that is, I think it makes sense to also spread some of the costs like we discussed through loan. I don't think it makes sense just to have it all in 1 year, but you want it high enough to capture, all of the, majority of the costs, my opinion. So, I don't want it to be too low. I want it to be high enough to capture those costs. But maybe not, there might be a small shortfall, and then as we move forward in the coming years, we use that budget line item to the extra money there, also say around.
So I think if council is gonna keep it at 100,000. You could plan to use any surplus at the end of the year. I mean, it happens. A budget is a budget. You do your best to make these guesses, and most of the time you do have some small surpluses at the end of the year. You could use those small surpluses to offset your overage on legal, because we know for a fact now we're going over what the budgeted amount is. But I think council just needs to be prepared that if you don't have enough surplus towards the end of the year, or you're running out of cash in your bank account, you may need to get, $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 loans to cover the legal for 2024. And then you will, like Councilor Grant is saying, is then you've already kind of prepared the taxpayers for $100,000 expense. And when you put the $100,000 in it next year, it's not gonna hit them because they were already used to it.
Yes, this is exactly my point. And so I just called this meeting because we're trying to make a decision here. I think that it would not be, I believe, you know, it could be increased, even still. But I don't think it makes sense to try to capture the entire cost this year. But I mean, I think, in my opinion, you know, another 30,000, you know, could go a long way, or we could, I mean, I think it should be increased.
Well, it needs to be increased because $100,000 is not the actual. What we know the actual will be is worth 45
Well, then I think,
without another phone call.
I mean, then, I mean, we can have a discussion about 145 around the table and.
145 is actual without another phone call to the lawyer. So what I'm saying is your actual.
Yeah, but knowing that you might have to have, you might have to get.
So we keep that budget line as not actual what we envision and then increase interest and loan payment. Is that how we work it in the budget?
Well, yeah, you could do that. You could build borrowing into your revenue side for 50, 60, and then increase your expense by 50, 60.
Then unless we're capturing it and no.
And then it balances, like it still zeroes out in the end. So yeah, we can present it that way.
If we're able to present it so that you yourselves even and the taxpayer at the end of the day doesn't say you had $100,000 and you went over budget by 60.
That's what you're saying, yeah.
We know we're going to go over budget of the 100,000. We're already over budget. So if you put that to what the real cost will be at what I'm anticipating more of a 165, being more realistic. And offset with the revenues through loan. Then at least it's to be able to present it. It seems like you knew this was coming. You didn't go over budget by $50,000.
Yes, that makes complete sense. But what council needs to decide is what's that bottom line between what the loan is covering and what the taxpayer is covering. So if it's going to be 145, but we know we're gonna need at least 165, then you're
To go for 175.
probably would be more prudent to go to 175. And then you only have to put your new borrowing in the revenue side to offset for 75.
But if you don't, if for some reason, and lawyers are,
Yeah. If
it's sure it's gonna be
something's,
higher than that, so then you, if there is any overage at 175, then you can offset some of the other things that might go over or under,
We put it in reserve.
or reserve for lawyers for that future as, Councilor Grant said about future dealings.
While I've been here, we purchased the truck with a loan. Have we purchased anything else historically in the recent?
No.
With a loan, like, well, would we set up the loan now, for say 75 or something, keep this 100 line item and process it now, or wait and see if we need it in the
wait
end?
and see.
Okay,
Well, before the chief come on, we bought a fire truck. I think they just finished paying that on.
In February.
Yeah, and then didn't they do that with the grader? The grader was the loan, and we paid that off, so.
So we're planning, we already know that we're planning, we've had this discussion at the table for next year to when the loan for the fire truck comes due, we have another purchase for a vehicle at fire that we're anticipating in 2025 budget.
With that being said, we starting to find the right words, but we're not over leveraged in terms of loans.
No, another.
Loans are little to none, we have on a few capital assets.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's, you know, it's not it's a very realistic thing for us to do.
And VDO actually recommended that we do that, that's why I reminded you that they did recommend, instead of taking it away from reserves, and because we have the availability of the funds and loans that we should use, and we're never anticipating having to use it for legal fees, we're actually was for capital purchase.
And my point about the previous loans was more of the fact that we've been financially responsible for the last couple of years as far as paying those things off. And it's not like we've ever been defaulted, it's avoiding payment.
So the ministry calculates your annual repayment limits for the year, so you are regulated. It's $402,000. So you and I would never recommend this, but you can go up to payments of $400,000 a year to be within the regulation. So that's, no, that's your principal and interest payments.
Okay.
So you can have payments.
There's a massive threshold, they're not gonna want to use it.
Massive, exactly. So I don't recommend it.
Can I jump in here? I think we should stick with
Councillor Vladimir?
the 100,000 in the budget and count on borrowing or have a line of credit or whatever it is for 75, 100,000 available to carry us through and spread it over the several years as was suggested, rather than a hit this year. We've already calculated what the increase is going to be based on 100,000. I would suggest that we stick with that. It's palatable for the taxpayer, I hope.
25% of the people are in the higher tax rate, and even that, the maximum was $300 increase this year. So 75% of the people are paying less than $150 per household. So I mean, it's not really an unreasonable increase.
I don't think so. Considering inflation and everything that's coming at us.
I mean, like Councilor Latimer had said, there's massive pressure of inflation and other costs. It's going to be an increase. It's just trying to manage it in a way that sets us up for the future, right? And not sacrificing us in the future. I think the budget itself looks good. Like it's well done. And we've also found efficiencies as well. But over the last 2 years, we've found some efficiencies.
Better, right? We know that the additional consulting that we had to hire due to what we needed to remedy in 2024, that will not be the same next year. We won't need to have this bookkeeper for 8 months next year coming in to. So this will change. We will see lower in administration for that particular. Like we've had efficiencies in IT, you know, there are other ways that we'll see lower costs as far as people costs go. We don't really have an inflation in cost of everything else, but we really do need to discuss.
Yeah, so we've got 100,000 and we've got 145,000. So what?
175. Yeah.
Well, sorry,
Oh, here.
on the what's the
Right.
taxpayers burden part?
Councillor Vladimir suggesting it was a line of credit of 75,
Yeah, so keep it at 100. That's budgeted right now.
but we only spent 45 there. So far, right?
Yes, but you know you're spending almost 145.
So anything over $100,000 is what I think I'm hearing is that I think I heard 175, of which 75 will go loan line of credit, something of that nature, or $100,000 leaving here because we already know what the impact on taxpayer is based on the work that Jenny's done with leaving at 100,000, but 75 would go loan.
Right, and that 75,000 is only a number pulled out of the air. We don't know what the, could be 200,000 by the
Right.
time we're done.
We know that it's at least 45,000.
But then it would come back to council, like once Donna knows what that true number is gonna be, and if we're way off and it's, $50,000, $60,000 more than we thought, then Donna would have to bring it back to council to say, I need your approval for the loan to be this much. But because, the budget only says this much, right?
So that's
So you've got the power to make that change further on. It's just the budget is for how to calculate the tax rate for the taxes part. The other piece, you guys can figure out what the number is going to be once you have better actuals.
Agreed.
I think it makes a lot of sense, Councilor Latimer, his point about that, this entry year and then borrow at the end of the year for as required. I think that makes a lot of sense.
Do we need a motion of that with people, No, we don't,
Just once the budget is approved, those are the Those are, yeah, so the budget will be approved at your public meeting, and that's where you'll pass the bylaws for your tax rates and your tax ratios. Oh yeah, tax ratios. Somebody had a question about maybe charging commercial, industrial pipelines more than the residents. So you technically could do that. That's with your tax ratios. But I don't recommend messing with the tax ratios unless you have like a big picture plan. So let's say the pipeline, for example, the pipeline pays 2.3 times more than your residential properties do. So you could change that and say, we want you to pay 2.6 times and we want the commercial properties to pay 1.9 times. So you can make those, but I don't recommend making those changes on the fly, like maybe when you're talking in 2025, if you're. It's, once the ratios are set, there's really no reason to change them unless you have like big picture plans.
That's not gonna help us future development either.
No, it's not.
The business of where.
Exactly. And so there's a lot of municipalities where the commercial rate is like 0.8 of the residential rate because they're trying to encourage business. So you might want to look at your tax ratios at some point, but I don't recommend in kind of the heat of the moment using it to balance the tax rate.
It's just a strategic planning exercise.
Yeah.
Part of that.
That's good.
That's for another day, yes.
Any other comments so far?
So are we? Have we,
We all in favor of
107,
the number suggestion of 100
170?
budget and 75 of an open-ended
I
think
believe we'll be safe. I believe we'll be safe at 175. But
Well, that's
leaving
good.
it at 100,000 for the taxpayer as it is here.
based on the numbers, I can't see a lot of people being crippled by less than $150 increase in taxes. Like 75% of the population is getting less than $150. And the top 10% are usually the ones on Booth Road, so I'm getting $300. And my neighbors. Knowing you. So I mean, $300 isn't gonna bankrupt me and send me back to Hamilton.
I will say there's a lot of municipalities that are in double digit increases, so I think you guys are doing not too bad.
Well, our job here is not to do any, magic or voodoo. It's people are litigating against us. Therefore, there's extraordinary costs associated with defending that. And inflation, salaries, unionization, there were many storms this year that many consultants required. It's because we're not all those different professionals. They're the source and that's all we can do. It is what it is truly.
And I think the other piece of this too, moving along in the budget, is the fire protection piece, right? We do have a new fire chief who's come in and we, who's recognized that a lot of the equipment is, and I'll let you speak to that, and this budget reflects what you need money.
Well, it was a couple of years there with which boy. And you're addressing the void. Fortunately, it's all gonna be that brought up to date quickly.
And I think we were able to give all of the requests to the fire department to reach.
Also, yeah.
Is there anything missing here in the tonight?
I noticed that for the purchase of the UTV, it's 10,750.
Yeah.
Now, the quote was at 27, but we had a government rebate until June 30th of $1,750. So we'll have to add that.
Oh, okay.
And so it'll be like 29,300 minus the 14,000 we're putting in. So it should be 15,000, not 8,000. Is that on my vote?
I think for no, knows that. Okay.
It's coming out of capital.
Yeah, it's in capital, but I did the math based on the quote.
Yeah.
Minus
So it's
what the
27,000.
association was. Oh, you know why it's lower? Because, I took the rebate of the HST
Yeah.
out. So
That's what I thought.
I'll just add the 1750 back in, so it'll be a little under 15, but we'll still be good.
Yeah.
So on the operating side, though, I think we captured everything that we were needing from the last meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, there is one question that I had for you. You were checking on the communications line, was the.
Okay, so that is, yes.
Okay. I knew there was something.
Yes, I talked to Spectrum and they recommend just put an additional line at the firewall, not at the landfill. And then they could, do it remotely. So we can still get a second line, for the paging. So we'll have to pay for an additional, phone line. Instead of running a line to the paging, tower, they can do it remotely from the fire station.
So right now it's Spectrum at the landfill, it's a freebie.
Yeah.
You don't pay that line out there, so. It's an
And
addition,
I wonder why, there should be,
because of the fact that they're on the property and use the
Oh,
tower,
okay.
that's a deal that they've made
Okay.
30 years ago. Where they don't charge them for the property and the tower.
that's. It's a big thing, it's usually like $200
Yeah,
$230.
yeah, the line is quite expensive with Spectrum.
So if we just have to add a phone line only,
Can we leave that till the next fiscal year so that it's not this year?
TAC is requesting an upgrade ASAP. So the line is already, so the phone line is already within the fire station. So it, like he said, it's not a huge, installation. It's just a monthly of $53 a month.
When did, ask Brandon, because we just went through this looking at, we found another savings for, I think, garage that, we were, and having to check on budget too, but. You know, what is the cost of that line? That was that Spectrum?
For
the garage?
The landline, the garage is 65.
So if we bump that up to like 80, because it's their time to come and install, but they really hit us, right? So if we did an 80, we're only talking about now August, September, October, November, December. We're talking minimum here.
Yeah.
80 times 5, $400.
Yeah. Not a huge cost.
That's the only change to the budget. I would not change it. It's like the dollar would have the raise. Like I gotta change it here and here and here.
I can look at on the fire filing cabinets, is like, yeah.
You can't afford it on the budget, make some of the legal files.
Things going on, should use the filing cabinet. That
Yeah.
box.
I had to do the same thing when I started in Chisholm, so I feel her pain.
Yeah, so it's not a huge cost.
So will that $5,000 in communications work for everything you need then?
Yeah.
Including the phone line? Oh, including the phone line?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay,
Because if we don't pay for communication at the tower. Then,
all right, it's saving here, it's saving here. Okay,
but we don't pay the communication cost like the power to them.
yeah, I wouldn't see those invoices.
Yeah.
Because it's a monthly invoice, so. I was just thinking that we would pay, not 230. And if you're saying that, yeah, it's all good. We're good for this year.
right, moving on to roads.
Come on, man.
So, well. Brendan doesn't know what I did.
Yeah.
Hold on, let's check my notes. So first big line that's bolded, the transfer to capital, it was 22,800. That was to balance your capital budget. But I'm no longer doing some of the things that we talked about, so that has reduced to 0. Our top servicing cold mix, we upped to 10,000 because it's costing more. We lowered the bridges and large culverts. You just be your biannual engineering and like $2,000 for repairs. So that was a savings. Culverts, we reduced the stockpile, just to have a stockpile. I had originally put 10,000, so we reduced that down to 5. I reduced the truck fuel because we had upped the fuel for the purpose of hauling the gravel, but Calvin staff are not hauling the gravel, a contractor is, so it can be charged to your capital project. So that saved some fuel costs there. Greater expenses, we had to go up from, I had 7,000 to 15,000 because there's a 3,000 hour of service needed. And greater fuel, we looked at actuals to date, I think it was the reason. And so we had to up that to 15,000. And sorry, then the very last one, contractor expenses, adding 15,000 to the 5 that I originally had to include brushing, not just the roadside grass cutting that I had budgeted.
Awesome. Okay, so the 10, so for ditching and the culverts that we're doing this year, that's gonna come out of this other one. Not into this contract and bracket, the actual this contract is restricted to the ground.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, your culverts and your ditching for the roads, your capital improvements are all in the capital.
Then the 5,000 square off right there.
Yes. For your emergency
Okay.
ones.
And then $10,000 for a ground 1 year for the yard stall.
Yes.
Does that include what we've already purchased, or is this on top of what we've already purchased this year?
That
Okay,
is
it's already hauled probably about 30 kilos this year, right, for the yard, so that's probably already, might be already gone, I feel. And it might be over, I just don't know. That was my only,
well, I mean, I can look at it. I think if it's
If it's close,
significant enough, for your close, because the majority of your gravel now is gonna go to the road project.
yeah, for doing, culverts after we do the addition, it's basically what's going right now, but then what that would leave us with again, 0 at the end of the year. We don't have a stockpile, right?
But you're not using the gravel, so I was quoted like 100 and,
Yeah, that's to strictly go on the roads. Okay. This is so like when we ditch, we put up to do an empty or whatever, it's on the gravel, we put the culvert in the capital with the gravel on top of that, so this is gravel in the yards for it.
so I would, because you have more money in your capital budget, I would, let's increase the capital budget because you've got funding for it.
Okay,
And you buy the gravel you need to replace the culverts on those roads that you're doing capital work on.
leave what we have in here.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll just quickly go through the rest of the operational because there's like pretty much nothing, and then we'll get to the roads capital real quick, and I think we're already done. Environmental, I took out internal equipment charges and maintenance because we really didn't know what it was for, and reduced the outside services from 5,000 down to 2,500. And the rest is changed, stayed the same. Health and social services. The only thing that was changed there was I added $4,000 for the potential for renting a small excavator for either some cemetery work. Well, dedicated to cemetery work. Creation. I increased hydro from 4,000 to 4,500 based on what the actuals were. And decreased the Rankin Sports Center from 8,600 down to 2,500 based on what the actual were so far this year. And no expectation of any big things happening.
The region sports, I think that would count like great blinders and all that kind of stuff, and that's what.
That's whatever may happen, you know, we need it for.
Um,
This is really based on actuals today, so we have a closer look at what the actuals really are.
Yeah, no, it looks good. I was just wasn't sure if it covered like as the hydro or whatever, it's just, you know,
Yeah, I don't think anything changed for the. Okay, so now we're at the capital budget, so we've already discussed, well, sorry, fire chief, if there's anything else you want to discuss, we did the UTV. Making sure that I add the 1750 in the lost rebate just because of timing. But I think I captured everything else that we agreed to at the last meeting. Any other problems on fire department? Public Works, we're budgeting for a used half-ton truck for about 30,000. And then the dump truck that you guys already bought, and we took out the small excavator and now have that as a leasing option for this year. We took out the baler at the landfill. There was 50,000, but we just decided to not do that this year. And then your roads project, so the gravel application, so the gravel going directly on the roads is 115,000. The Peddlers Road project, 241,408, which is the exact amount of the north. So we're a little off. The original budget was about 245. So just to get things to balance to zero, if we go over by a couple grand, it's not going to be a big deal. So the ditching project for the two roads includes the culverts. We increased it from 60 to 70 to include the culverts, but we should probably increase it a little more for the gravel needed for the culverts.
yes,
So what do you think? And then another 10?
yeah, I think. Fine.
Okay, so if we increase the ditching project from 70,000 to 80,000, we're just going to increase use of the funding.
Yeah, so that's just gonna come from all statements, is that right?
CCBN.
That's gonna be our-
Yeah, so your total capital budget will now be 875,000. The next page being paid for by fire department reserves, 47,250, roads reserves, 141,489. And CCBF, 205,000, and Nords, 241,408. Plus the 250, so you're out by 250,000, which is the loan you took out for the part of the dump truck.
And this, the roads reserve here, the 140, does that include like the revenue that we would sold, like?
No, that's in the operating revenues. To help balance the operating. So just an item to note, because I know Donna has brought up the whole BDO saying you should borrow instead of using your reserves. I get it, and he's not wrong. The fire department has pretty good reserve pool. With the ins and outs at the fire department, their balance at the end of this year should be about 110,000 left. But your roads reserve because of the dump truck and only financing 250 instead of the 361, you're pretty much clearing out your road reserve, your road equipment reserve.
And that's a little bit dangerous at this point when you know the roof on the sand domes. Last time you had that quoted out, it was a year ago, I think.
The other thing, man, was. It was 55 grand.
Oh,
Yeah.
I thought it was in the north.
No, right now, that's if we shingle it, if it starts to get into the plywood, plywood starts to rot and stuff, then you're getting into the machine and then it could go up to like 200,000.
Can I ask why, the town only borrowed 250? You know,
Yeah, it was last fiscal year with the last treasurer and discussion at budget finance council, and that's what's happening.
I think I would probably make a recommendation for next time to borrow the entire amount of your big equipment. Because then it's that consistency piece of you pay that off, by that time you need a new truck. And so you always have built in those payments and there's no major fluctuation.
As we're doing this fire, you know, if that's something that we're accustomed to seeing in budget. In fact, we did increase that loan by 50,000 from government, back to council, and said we can do more, because the bank was even questioning why we weren't borrowing more.
It may have been possibly interest rates were particularly a little higher then. So I think what we landed about 6 or 7%. And that might have been a factor. I'm not sure.
Okay, so that's the capital budget, and then the next sheet's just what the tax rates end up at, and then the Octo reports, which I've summarized in the memo at the start, so that's pretty much the package as it sits now.
I just wanted to make note of the assessment increase. So you're looking like this, specifically like the value correct, like it says 0.87%. Make note of that. I want to make sure I got the right number. I'm not gonna say something silly.
So your assessment has increased by 0.87%.
Yeah, and that's not a significant increase at all. That's basically nothing. So one of the things that I see a lot, and it always bothered me is, you know, there'd be like a 89% assessment increase, and then there'd be like 6% tax increase. Right? It's like, okay, well, this is actually a pretty significant increase. So because our assessment increase is so low, the percentage of tax increase, it eases the burden, right? And you know, like things,
New assessment.
we're gonna get our tax off of it, which is not great. This is why we need to try to do what we can to promote growth. But just to make a point that it's not like the double dipping that you see a lot of times.
Exactly.
That's not happening here. Just want to make that point.
Well, that's why I commented on the tax change dollar figure as opposed to the tax change percentage figure. Because the tax change is much more palatable when you realize that even the most significant group in the community is hitting $174. But the vast majority of the community is less than 150 for the year. Like, if I can get a loan and only pay that interest, I'd be very happy.
That was something that my council was happy to see, is because the dollar amount isn't as scary as a percentage. It's percentages do scare people. So to say your taxes are going up, your tax rate's going up by 77%, that's gonna freak people out. But if you say it's only going to be.
Well, it's significant, and I know the mayor, who's not with us tonight, keeps going on about the gas line. And if we weren't charging them what they get charged, that dollar value would be significant. Should any consider the percentage, it's the dollar value that would be critical.
And you know, when we look at this budget, and at the very beginning, you'll see, you know, how Estimating split it up. When you look at your levies from government, you know, healthcare and all of those levies, that's actually exactly what you bring in from Pipeline brings in about $400,000. Our levies are just a little bit over 400, so that pretty much evens them out. So without the gas pipeline, you wouldn't afford these levies. That's what the pipeline tax does give to us. And if you want to just flip one more over, I know that Councilor Latimer had asked about this little blank sheet that says 2023 total, 2024 interim, about the total, the payment.
I have-
in year.
I have a question before we get to that. It's on page 20. It has exempt. What exactly is exempt? Huh? It's right at the bottom of page 20 under industrial, construction, et cetera. Exempt 4.255 million. Was that Crown land or what exactly is that?
It's probably partly Crown land or,
For the church.
it's the exempt properties, your churches, if you have any schools. But MPAC tells you what's exempt.
Okay,
Our-
I just,
Our own
Yeah,
properties,
it's kind of vague.
municipal properties.
the landfill, our own properties, the cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have one church and no schools, so it must be some of those other things. That was my question. I just, thank you. Great job, by the way. I'm really impressed with this.
Thank you. And so if we go to that page with the payment in lira, there was some question about whether or not the Ontario and federal government actually do pay taxes, or, if there was any opportunities. So through legislation, they don't have to. They can pay whatever they want or pay nothing. So I pulled for 2023 and the interim tax bill for 2024, just to show you. And of the 36 properties that we do have, Ministry of Transportation, Natural Resources, and then the park. What I can tell you is that they actually pay exactly what we are charging them in taxes. So they're not paying, or they're not paying the reduced rate in taxation. When we send them the tax bill, they're paying it in full.
What rate do we charge them? What category would we be?
So the classification of how it's affected.
I don't have all the.
We don't have a classification. But again, we don't have a say in that, right? It's impacted, yeah, and it's that rate.
Well, thanks for finding that information, because I was curious and I was assuming that they weren't paying very much. But that's excellent that they're paying a reasonable amount, say.
And I think it is people don't understand that or know it, so I think it's a good public process too, for the public to now know that yes, these government agencies are in fact paying us taxes to a tune of $35,000. And there was also discussion about the Canadian Ecology Center here. And I know that we're naming them, but because we were talking about them and how they don't pay because they lease the land from Ministry of Natural Resources at the park.
Right.
So they don't own the land. So if they own the land, they're a not-for-profit organization and they don't qualify for tax exemption. So they would be paying us, but because they lease their land from the park, and that's why we don't see a tax bill for the Canadian. They don't pay education taxes, by the way.
Any other?
Sorry,
No,
no.
go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so I will work with Donna on the actual public package presentation. The things that, this is a public document, it's going to be on the website, but the actual public presentation package. And then if you can go.
Because we wanted it to have visuals with the percentages, and we really wanted to, as we talked about before, showcase the, the pills are a good thing to showcase, that yes, they do bring in the impact of having the pipeline here. If we didn't have the pipeline, what effect that would make, and our levies, and impact is another one that will add to the levies, because there is a charge for impact. There is a charge for the railway crossing, and I think it's a great opportunity to show the public that these are your expenses before you open the door, and anyone shows up to work.
Exactly.
Before you put anything, before we catch up to the fire department's equipment that's been left for years, unattended to. So, so we worked on that. So we were prepared for the public comment meeting on the 25th of June. July. So I.
I'm running for council. Wait for Councilor Grant to come back and then vote. There's no other comments?
My comment would be, great job on going through this process with us. This is my now second time, and I'm much more familiar with it. I've learned a lot too, so I appreciate Jenny, I appreciate all the work of the staff here on that. Thank you. By the time the term is done, we'll be experts on municipal budgets, just in time.
So if there's no other comments, have a vote on accepting this presentation. Okay. All in favor? Including myself.
And before we get on to the next budget, is the next discussion, just 2 quick minutes because it does fall into budget. And I'm going to take this opportunity for Brandon to maybe bring you up to speed on the Peddler Road, the Peddler Boundary Road, north and CCDF funding. And how we had to change up that program because of the cost. And something very recent again has occurred with costing, so we'll just let Brandon voice what we're going to end up doing this Peddler Boundary Road.
So we're gonna basically repulverize all of Boundary Road, 2 kilometers Boundary Road, basically the whole road. We're gonna pulverize it and put double layer tar and chip over it. That's about 165,000 plus tax on its own. And then the remaining leftover money, we're gonna take that and pick the worst spots of peddlers and just put a recap over those worst spots with no pulverization. So that's what we're gonna get with the amount of money we have for this year. So boundary will be no more bumps, no more nothing. It'll be smooth. They're gonna grade it, double layer, done. It'll be fun.
And both funders have agreed that we could revise that original project. So we have to spend the money, it has to be on that project, and they've agreed to that revision. So I wanted to bring it tonight so that you're aware and make sure that you're in agreement with that, because we need to spend that money. That's the gas tax money that we lose. It's been 4 years now for that particular project. So both CCDF and Nords have agreed that if we go that way, and we're going to this project being revised in that fashion, they're okay with it. And after tonight, if you agree, you're gonna get going on it.
Yeah, so basically get us boundary done and then about a kilometer, roughly about a kilometer recap on that. So I was thinking like Ottawa Hill is falling apart. Where we do lots of coal patching, recap those areas, then hold up for a couple of years, we might spend a problem on coal patching. Break it out.
Whole agreeing, so it makes sense, sometimes we should try to spread money through there. I think the boundary is.
It's one of the 2 access routes.
Some access route is gone, it's still, it's very, I
And
don't
it joins 2 townships together and it's probably one of your major arteries.
absolutely.
So I keep thinking, like, cities that would, in the future, they're gonna do stuff on the highway. When there's an accident on the highway, we all know that this is the only way he can get around these down pedals. And with those single bridges, we even have to get on the home side happens. So the future planning should be improving pedalers because they're gonna have a lot of highway traffic once this construction program. Might not be even in our lifetime. But there's forward thinking is probably thinking something we should be considered.
Well, that's gonna be a whole other thing, because if they ever decide, like, when they do that bypass or whatever. What's gonna happen to 17? Is that gonna fall back on the township to maintain now? Because it's still gonna be there, right? You still gotta use it, so is that gonna fall back on the township to maintain the old highway, you know what I mean?
And
Plow it, everything.
maintain it to that standard.
And we maintain it to a class 4 highway or a class 3 highway, you know what I mean?
Okay,
The future's.
There's lots of future thoughts coming, right?
well, we don't have a pipeline.
And yeah, then when the government shuts down the pipeline, then we're in our taxes will all. Anything else?
So We'll make it a toll highway if we end up owning it.
And we'll sell it off to the Spanish or something like that, like they did the 407. So. If nothing else to close, okay, next session is gonna be closed, and everybody move, second and move in closed. Counselor Manson and Counselor Levin. 6:05, we'll move into close. And all in favor? Favor. Including this. Yeah, for section 239, yes, or why council will move into open session or closed session. Consider advice subject to solicitor client privilege and advice on litigation or potential litigation. Thank you. Had to get that.